Bonsoir à tous et merci beaucoup de nous rejoindre aujourd'hui pour une séance sur des façons différentes, 13 en tout, d'apprendre le français. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, my colleague Laura and I, for a webinar on many different ways that you can learn French. So let us begin. The first thing that I want to say is that a little bit about me and my story. I stepped foot into a classroom exactly 20 years ago, teaching French. And in that time, I have learned and experienced an awful lot. And I take great pleasure in sharing my experience with students here at the Academy, because I think that it's extremely important to understand that learning French, because that's what we're talking about tonight, but learning foreign languages in general is a journey. And it means that you are going to have many different opportunities to learn and practice and experience that language. And we want to talk about all these experiences tonight. So Laura and I have really today two aims, okay? The first one is that we are fully aware that today the market is saturated with options to learn French. French is the first foreign language that people choose if you look at statistics throughout the world. So naturally, there are thousands of different resources out there, of methodologies, of strategies. And what we both want to do today is to help you to demystify it all, help you to navigate around all this, so it starts to make sense for you. And the second thing is that we really want you to understand how you best learn and what is most important for you to adopt in order for you to learn French well, but for you only. So when I say it's a journey, it is a very personal journey. So grab a notebook and a pen, because you'll be doing some work as well. It's not just about us. Now, the first thing that I want to say is I told you a little bit about my story, having stepped into a classroom 20 years ago today. As a matter of fact, today is my UK anniversary. I arrived in the UK in my 2 suitcases 22 years ago. So there's something to celebrate. There's two things about my story that are relevant to this webinar and something that hopefully you can relate to. The first thing is about my own background. I grew up in Jura, which is the east side of France by the Swiss border. It's a very unspoiled area. It's absolutely beautiful with a great, great lifestyle. But I think it's fair to say that it's very far away from an international metropolis where you get opportunities to speak and learn foreign languages, to meet people who speak different languages or have different cultures. My parents didn't speak any foreign languages, and even when I went to school and started learning English at the age of 11, it was an important school subject, but there was not a huge emphasis on, you know, learning it or ever becoming bilingual. So what I'm trying to say here is that becoming bilingual clearly wasn't something that I was predisposed to be. And the second thing about my own story is that I am not an academic. And because for many people, speaking a foreign language or learning a foreign language starts by being a school subject, many think that you have to be very smart and intellectual to learn a foreign language. And I'm here to tell you that you don't. I'm absolutely not an academic. And yet I am bilingual today. So if I was able to do it, then I truly believe that anyone can. Interestingly enough, in terms of this part of my story about not being an academic, it also means that when I started in the world of language training, it found me. It was a happy accident. That's a story for another day, but I fell very passionate about it very quickly, hence the reason why I'm still here 20 years later. But it's fair to say that when I started teaching, I totally had the imposter syndrome. Unlike my peers, I didn't have the right training, the right qualifications or degrees. But that served me, and that's the benefit of hindsight. Today, after 20 years, I realized that when I started, I worked very, very hard. I never turned down a lesson. I drove miles. That was well before online learning. I drove miles to go to French lessons. I taught children, teenagers, adults from all sorts of different backgrounds, and people who were very able, people who were quite challenged. And that gave me such an incredible insight on how people can learn foreign languages. Now, I want to introduce you to my colleague Laura, who shares this webinar with me, because I think that the richness of our collaboration here at the Academy is that Laura has a completely different story to mine. And I think that's the reason why that, us working together on creating language programs for our students works so well. So Laura, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar. So completely what Natalie said, it's really interesting to work together because we have such different stories and such different backgrounds. So unlike Natalie, I was born into a multilingual family. So my mother is English, my father is Belgian. So for those of you who know Belgium, you'll know already that it is a multilingual country. And then we're having parents from different nationalities as well. I was born in Belgium, we grew up in England. I was constantly going between the two. So I really grew up in a very multilingual environment, as I said, with multilingual parents and multilingual families on both sides. So for me, languages was always a huge part of my childhood. And we were always constantly switching between languages and learning about other languages and cultures. And then I loved languages as I grew up and I went into higher education. I did multiple degrees in languages and linguistics. So it's always something for me. It's been something that I've absolutely loved and that I've always really wanted to be as much engrossed as possible in the academic side of it. So after studying languages and linguistics in various universities around Europe, I went and I taught English and French as a foreign language in different universities. And then I was also involved in some research projects as well that was all to do with teaching and learning languages. And then eventually I ended up here at VT with Natalie, which again was a nice happy coincidence as well. So one of the things that I've just loved since I've been at VT, I've been here for 2 years now. And one of the things that I loved when I first arrived was really how much we focus on the individual learners as well. Throughout all of my studies and throughout my personal language learning journeys, the thing I've really known and the thing I've really seen is how important it is to think about how you like to learn and the individual learner. And I think that's just something that I fell in love with when I arrived at Vichy, that I felt we did so well. So I've been really happy to help Natalie and Vichy expand on this journey as well. And now I'm excited to share everything that we've learned so far with you guys as well.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. And something else that I want to say before we get into the heart of this session is that language is evolving all the time. It's interchangeable, it's recyclable. That's why we love it. We love it because it isn't a mathematical equation. You can use the language and shape it in many different ways to suit you. And please understand that there is never a right or a wrong answer when it comes to learning French. Even linguists, people who work, analyze, research foreign languages all day long, the mechanics behind them, the science behind how you learn them, even they don't agree. Even they change their mind, even they write papers on different subjects all the time. That's for you to understand you know, all the options that there are when you're trying to learn a foreign language. It's a subject that is so vast that it's actually really quite interesting, because it means that you can kind of pick and choose what suits you best. You know, some linguists who are very, very keen on grammar, you know, the grammarians, will argue with the gramophobes that you absolutely have to master grammar in order to be proficient in a foreign language. And people who don't agree with that will argue that actually people who are excellent at grammar may not be the best people when it comes to communicating with other native speakers in real life. Then they'll argue that it very much depends on how the grammar was taught, who delivered the lessons, and what was in the lessons, and what was the context of it, etc., etc. Most linguists will tell you that the immersion factor is crucial, but by this, a lot of people will understand, you know, immersion in the foreign country, where you'll find that people have written entire books on how you can immerse yourself in the language in your own home. So the reason why I want to emphasize a little bit on this is that it is a subject that is so vast that we are going to try to condense it. We are going to try to demystify all that's on the market at the moment. But the way that we're going to do this is by thinking about you and look at how you learn and what you should put into your own little recipe to make it work for you. Because let's face it, something that we know is that when it comes to our cognitive skills, which we use a lot when we speak a foreign language, we are absolutely not wired in the same way. So what may work for Laura when she learns Spanish is not going to work for me when I do. And the other things to consider, guys, is that it's a little bit like everything in life. It's very much all about balance. Okay, a lot of different things can work, but it's going to be about how you balance all of these methodologies and strategies and resources. So the first thing that I would love for you to think about is, right now in your language journey, where are you and where would you like to go? And I'd love for you to take a moment to write this down. How would you describe your current level of French, or how you feel about your level of French, how you would describe yourself as a learner to other people? And then, what is your ideal scenario? When you visualize yourself learning or speaking French, practicing French, where is it? Who with? And what is your level of fluency? So now, what we're going to start doing before we go over the 13 different ways that you can learn a foreign language, our 13 commandments, we're going to talk about you, because this is very much all about you. We're going to look at the type of learner that you are, your personality in a very colorful way that can help you find out how you will best learn a foreign language. Then we're going to show you how you can look at the different communicative skills that you would like to focus on, and how you can decide on the level that you'd like to reach and therefore set yourself a language goal. Needless to say that time and budget is also extremely relevant to what is going to work for you. So when you've decided on where you feel you're at the moment and where you'd like to go, then perhaps you can do some sort of little diagram and go, okay, this is the time that I can honestly dedicate to learning French every week. Being realistic with your current lifestyle, then what is the budget that I would allow myself to spend on a language program for the next 12 months? What to me would be a really good investment in my personal development if I could get to that goal? And then in terms of looking at what skills you want to focus on and your personality in color and the type of learner that you are, then Laura and I are just going to share a few things with you now. So together with this webinar, you will have also received a few documents. So these are the ones that I'm going to share with you now. So please bear with me. Okay, so I think we are going to start with this one because that's the fun, colorful one. Now, we are not life coaches, okay? So we don't pretend that we are expert in analyzing people's personality with color. And besides, we don't need to know everything about you in order to put a French language program together that is going to work for you. However, have you ever heard of the concept of personality in colors? I think that it is quite fascinating. We have chosen to just look at 4, but you can, there's plenty of information about this online if it's something that really interests you. And you'll find that you can have the orange color and the pink and purple color, but for the purpose of this exercise, I think that those 4 colors are really quite enough. If you find that you are more of a red person, this means that details are not really going to be your thing. You want results, you don't want details, and you would rather bypass certain things and get to a result that's not perfect, but you're there, rather than go through all the different steps. You are also someone who is, fairly impatient and impulsive. So you need some strong actions. This is really important when learning a foreign language, because you may not be someone who like to learn in lessons that is really too detailed. You are probably going to easily get bored, but you are fairly competitive. So we can give you some quite high targets and you will work to achieve them. For example, if you are more of a yellow learner, you need fun. You need a lot of entertainment in your lesson. Otherwise, your concentration isn't quite there. You like to be in a group. You like to share what you are learning because you're a very sociable learner. If you're more of a blue person, then to the contrary, of the red, you love the details. So you are someone who is going to need very clear instructions and doesn't mind reading them. You are someone who is likely to feel that you are not progressing if you don't understand all the ins and outs of what you are learning in that language. People who are more green are people who will progress at their own rate of ability and speed. They're not competing against anyone. They don't need that much entertainment. They don't need all the details. They just need a very supportive and caring environment, and they will get there just as well as anyone else in their own time. When you look at those adjectives on the screen, can you maybe guess in what category you would best fit in? Often we are kind of 2 colors. There is a dominant one and there's one that's not too far away. That's really interesting. And if you are one of the Beachy students, then you might want to share that with your French coach, because that will help us to help you. So now moving on, something that is crucially important when learning a foreign language. And if you don't remember much of what we are covering today, then please bear this in mind. What type of learner are you? I very often go back to when I started teaching languages. After 2 or 3 years and realizing that I was absolutely going to make this my career, I decided to retrain. And one day in the training, this is what they were talking about. And that blew my mind. I had never heard of the concept of being a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner. And in an instant, at the age of 26 or 27, I understood why I was very good in certain subjects at school and very poor at others. I understood why I was preparing my lessons in the way that I was preparing them for my learners. And a lot of this was down to the kind of learner that I was. So we've got a little quiz that we've sent you as well by email with this video, and try to do it. It's very brief. You can find a lot more detailed questionnaires online, but try and have a go at it. We very often think that we are visual learners. Why? Because this is how we are taught at school. Sit down at your desk, watch the teacher speak, have a look at the board. We now have phones, or we work on our screens. We are constantly targeted by image and words. So we think that we're visual learners, but this is down to our environment. Actually, we are not all visual learners. Some of us are auditory. So some of us will learn much better and perform much better through sounds and noises. Some of us are kinesthetic. Being kinesthetic means that you're a practical, hands-on kind of learner. You need to do something in order to learn. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I often share the story that I trained at martial arts at an adult age in my 30s. And when the instructor was talking about the movements that we had to do, I was lost. It was too technical for me, it was too detailed. The minute I could do the movements at the same time as him, whilst he was saying exactly the same thing, I got it. So do the quiz and take a moment to try and find out if you are more of a visual learner, an auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner. Your learning style is going to be crucial in the way that you learn French, and therefore will really impact your progression. Now, now that you've kind of analyzed the kind of learner that you were, let's have a look at the skills that you want to focus on, the level that you want to get to, and therefore what sort of language goals would you like to have? So again, traditionally, we just think that learning a foreign language is all about, listening, speaking, writing, sorry. And I just said listening, reading, writing, and speaking. It'll tie it today. When people come to us, the majority of people want to learn to speak. Learning French is a method of communication, right? So people put a great emphasis on speaking. You need to understand that there's two elements to the speaking skills: speaking production and speaking interaction. This is too often overlooked. So we encourage all our students to go through these little booklets. You will go through every single skill. So let's start with the first one, listening. You have, the Bible for language levels in Europe, originally, now throughout the world, is the common European framework for languages. We go by that framework for all the language programs that we create at the Academy, and increasingly our students are doing placement tests, they're doing certifications at the end of the language programs with us, and all of that is being assessed according to the European Framework for Languages. And the reason why it's really quite brilliant is because you have 6 different levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. So A1, A2 is the elementary level. You go from being a complete beginner to getting by in regular, familiar, everyday situation. Your grammar may not be usually accurate. You may not be able to speak in a way that is complex or understand detailed conversations, but you can get by. Then you can move to the B level, B1, B2. That's what we call independent learners. A B1 level means that, for example, you can conjugate in your verbs and therefore speak or write in most of the tenses. You start to use more complex and detailed sentences. Then you move to B2 level, which is really quite brilliant. With a B2 level, you can comfortably go and live in France or any other French-speaking countries, okay? B2 level is taking it up a notch when it comes to the complexity of the language. And then we go to C1, C2, which is mastery, okay? So when you have reached a C2 level, you are completely fluent. So what would be really interesting for you is to spend time looking at this document. Where do you want to be at? You know, because everything that we are discussing tonight works for all the learners at any different stages. You know, we have learners here at the Academy who are comfortably at a C1 level, and they still feel that they could go to the next step. They are still using all the techniques that we are sharing with you tonight. So where would you like to get to? And an interesting exercise would be to print out this little booklet, grab a highlighter and go through every single skills and decide what your aim is. Now we can move the goalposts next year, but where is it at the moment? And then think about why you are learning the language, the situation that you imagine yourself or anticipate being in when you'll have to interact in French. For now, what skills do you need the most? Is it listening? Is it writing? Is it reading? Is it interacting orally with people? Is it producing the language, doing presentations, for example? Why don't you maybe choose just 2 or 3 for now to make your language goals digestible bite-sized chunks? And then if it was listening, for example, and you wanted to reach your B1 level, then you could look at this. Let's look at the first one. I can understand straightforward factual information about everyday study or work-related topics, identifying both general meaning and specific details, provided that speech is clear and in a familiar accent. So if that is something that you want to be working towards, put a tick next to it. When we do a review with you, we can go through that booklet and we can give you very specific advice on how to get there or to the next step if you've already reached it. So I would very much encourage you to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on this booklet. Decide what skills matter to you the most and what level you would very much like to reach. Laura, amongst all the little, you know, techniques and tips that I've shared so far, and before we start on our 13 commandments, is there anything that you would like to share or anything that I may have forgotten?
No, I think it was very complete. The only thing I would like to stress on is that when you start thinking really about what your learning styles are, or what your personality and color is, and how you can apply that to language learning, is that you might find that, especially with the learning philosophy, it might you might find that it slightly changes as you grow in confidence and as you grow in experience as well. So for example, especially a lot of people struggle with listening a lot to begin with, and then it becomes easier afterwards. So I think also is once you have this, not to stay extremely rigid in what you have as well, and to always consider how you can, you know, once we give you, it's not like a label that you have to keep forever. It's something that is there to guide you in your learning, and it's okay if you feel like it changes slightly as you progress.
Completely agree. And as a matter of fact, you use the adjective rigid, and rigidity and perfection they are the enemy of language learning.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm going to stop the share now, and we're going to start with our 13 different ways to learn. So what I'll do is I list all the different ways and resources, methodologies that you can use to learn French, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of each of them. So the first one is learning in a group versus learning in a private lesson. Okay, so what's best? There is one that is better than the other. So the first thing that you need to know is there's a little bit of science behind this one. When you learn on your own with a language coach, it is estimated that the knowledge that you absorb is about 3 times more than when you are in a group. Okay, again, this could change from one person to another, but as a general rule, so 1 hour of private lesson equates to 3, you have to do 3 groups. Sorry, I'm not explaining that very well. When you do just 1 hour of lesson, you will need to do 3 hours of group lessons to acquire the same amount of knowledge. However, there are other factors that are equally as important. Think about you, your personality and your mindset when you are learning. Some students feel very uncomfortable on their own in a classroom with a language coach. I've heard that before. So I feel that if it's you, then it's completely counterproductive to be on your own. If for you, what's just as important as learning French is also to feel part of a community, because that support and the idea of socializing with people who share an interest with you is really important, then you are very likely to get a lot more from the groups than the one-on-one. So I think it's very important that people understand that, yes, of course, when you are on your own with a language coach, you will cover a lot more than you are with a group, even at the academy where we have very small groups. But it isn't all about what research have said, because they kind of plugged in one person in a group and another one in one-on-one and went, oh, this one has absorbed 3 times the knowledge than this one had. Therefore, no, that's an important factor. But once again, and I'm going to say that an awful lot during this webinar, this is also about you. How do you feel when you do private lessons? How do you feel in a group? Some people love private lessons and yet are not looking to reach their goals very fast. But for them, it's little time for themselves. They are investing in their personal development. Yes, they want to speak French. Yes, they go on holiday to France. They have family there. They bought a property there. But really, this is about self-care and personal development every week. So they want the one-on-one. For other people, they have such busy diaries at work that they know they'll never attend the group. So they're already worried before they start that they're not going to make the commitment. Well, let's have private lessons. But I know a lot of people who would much rather go to groups, because the idea of committing to a group, getting on with the people, then feel accountable that you have to turn up because, hey, everyone will be there and and we're stand together, we're in it together, like we're suffering the whole language learning thing together. So think about this for a moment. How do you feel with one or the other? And again, when I said earlier it's all about balance, it is proven that actually the best way to learn is to do both. But we also understand that that's not always an option. The number 3 and 4 that we want to cover are online and offline. So I've said that I stepped foot in a French classroom for the first time, 20 years ago. Well, clearly online definitely wasn't on the table at the time. At Vici, we adopted iVici, our online language learning platform, back in 2014. So we didn't wait for unfortunate, recent event to be forced to go online. We have been doing it for 8 years, so we know it works. But interestingly enough, when the crisis hit, a lot of language schools decided to close down their physical premises and go online. We didn't. It's a decision that we didn't take lightly, but we wanted to keep the premises. Why? Once again, because we want to make sure that we can offer our students, a lot of different options. Now, is there one that is better than the other? For years and years and years, people used to say, oh, language is human interaction. You couldn't possibly learn online. No, I have to be in the same room as the teacher. Otherwise, there's no way that I would learn. On a computer, are you joking me? I mean, if I had had a penny every time I heard that, I'd be very rich by now. The thing is this, there's been 2 things. Of course, the fact that, we've just had a pandemic and people were forced to be online changed people's attitude. At some point they went, do you know what, I'm not going to not do anything. Okay, well, let's do it online. Actually, it's not so bad. Actually, it's quite practical. Actually, I don't have to travel or be stuck in traffic. Actually, I can have the kids downstairs and learn upstairs. But I think it's also the fact that the idea of e-learning has vastly evolved in the last few years. When it first started, e-learning wasn't, high quality and professional language coaching with live coaches with you there. And just like we have with iVici, the interactive classroom with tons of features, which means that when you are learning online, you should have access to as many resources as you do when you come to the academy. So there was none of that. It was just really fairly boring e-learning programs where you were just speaking to a computer with very little interaction. And I think that lazy teaching attitude of people who just wanted to make a quick buck to go online, put on a French course that they could sell to millions of people around the world, actually gave e-learning a bad name. But again, this has evolved over time, and we can now say that the online training we can offer our French students is really just as good as what we can do here, because I am at the academy. Now, again, it is about you. If you feel that for you, in order to feel ready to learn French, and again, in the right mindset, you have to physically go somewhere, then you should look for in-house language programs. If, on the other hand, it really doesn't matter to you and that actually you would rather do it online because you feel that the practicality is going to be that little ingredient that gets you going and enables you to give you some continuity and regularity in your learning, then you need to go for online. If you really feel that meeting people physically and feeling part of this community to you has to be on site, then come to the academy. Again, actually having both is pretty perfect. But we also understand that that's not always a possibility, especially for our students who live at the moment. We have students in the United States, we have students in France, in Germany. Clearly, they're not going to come to a beautiful little market town of Newbury in West Berkshire on a regular basis. But it also means that you could complement what you do with us by finding a little social group. We have a customer who is based in Germany, and I think once a month, she actually goes to a little social club where they meet and speak French. And she said that that is perfect for her because she really wants the structured and, result-oriented program that we provide her, but she loves that interaction with Bia that she can get at home. So online, offline, both can be excellent quality. Again, it's very much about you. When you see yourself learning, do you feel that you physically need to go somewhere? Do you feel that you need to meet with that community of yours? Or do you want the practical element? Are you very comfortable with online tools that for you, it feels extremely natural to be learning online? Then we want to talk to you about e-learning, but e-learning through a different form, which is self-study digital platforms. So again, at Vici, we primarily work with 3, but one's for children, so we'll park that one for today. We work with 2 called Lingua Attack and Hypknowledge. E-learning platforms like these ones can be wonderful add-on resources to your language programs. They can truly enhance your learning, and they can really, really, hand on heart, make you progress faster. There is no doubt about it. What I would ask you to be a little bit wary of are platforms that tell you that you can use them on their own and that you don't need the support and guidance of a language coach. Can you do that? Absolutely. Will you get results? I am not convinced. And I am clearly a little bit biased, but in my 20-year career, digital platforms they've been around for about 10 years, but taken seriously and really being created on modern languages and not just some, boring click on the picture and find, the word associated to the picture, probably only 6-7 years. So they have still been around for a very long time. I have yet to find one that has created a bilingual person. If I'm mistaken here, then perhaps people can send me an email and say you're absolutely wrong because I've used this and I'm now fluent. But I read a study, again, pinch of salt on some of the research, but I've read a study years ago that says that people who learn foreign languages on their own for an hour a day, I mean, that is some serious commitment, will take 17 years before they can actually start to have half a decent conversation. So I'm all for making learning French a journey, but 17 years is quite a long time. You decide. So digital self-study platform, we love them. We think that if they accompany your language program, they can truly make a difference to your learning. Why? We talked about immersion earlier on. The immersion factor that they provide you with is brilliant. As much as we would love to be with you all the time, to guide you and be with you, so you can speak French all the time, it's simply not possible. So what the digital platform do is that on a regular basis, even for 5 minutes, they connect your brain to the language. And we've had excellent results with the platforms that we've used. Again, it's about you. So the new platform that we are now using, called Hypknowledge, uses hypnosis, you may have guessed, to help people break down barriers and be more comfortable speaking, and therefore absorb more of the knowledge. We've tested it before it came about. The staff tested it, some of our students tested it, and it's very much 50-50. Some of us loved it, and I'm one of them. Some of them are a little bit reserved about it and not so sure that it's really beneficial or something they'd like to learn. To the contrary, Lingua Attack, who is the other platform that we use, and it's full of very authentic French videos, and its contextual language is absolutely brilliant. You can do exercise, you can just watch the videos. Through the back office, we can track where you're at. Some of our learners are on it all the time, and some of them after 3 or 4 months tell us that, you know, they don't particularly enjoy that kind of learning. So again, digital study platforms are, I think, an amazing way to push your French skills further. But before you decide to adopt one, take a step back and think about all that we've said at the start of this webinar about you and how you like to learn. If you are not someone who is very good with daily disciplines, not that you have to do it daily, by the way. You could do it just once a week, twice a week, as long as it's regular. That's the key to get your brain really engaged. Your brain expects it on a regular basis. But if you're not usually self-disciplined, if you're not someone who is finding much rewards into learning something on your own, I would advise against them, because they are likely to make you feel pretty bad about yourself. If you are struggling to get into a routine with them, you'll just end up going to your next coaching session, having to tell the coach that you've not done the homework or not watched the video, or you may be sat in front of it feeling a little lost because it's not quite you, because you need real guidance. So if that's how you are, then park them for the time being and only start to use a digital platform if you've been advised by a professional who knows you as a learner very well to tell you which platform they think you should adopt. So the next things are apps. Well, I think everyone could gather that I was going to mention apps because that is what everyone is talking about, language apps. So I often tell a little bit of a story about that, or more of an anecdote. So many people, when I am at, say, dinner parties and they start to talk about languages and someone says, oh, I'm using Duolingo and I'm using Babbel. And so often people would go, oh, don't tell Natty, she'll be upset, like she's like a proper linguist, so she's not going to like it. This is not true. I am in favor of everything that will help my learners. I often say that as a language coach, the biggest reward that we can receive from our learners is that one day they say, we don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. Like, I'm so confident and comfortable speaking French. This is goodbye from me. That's a really good day for us. So if you can find an app that is really helping you, then I'm saying, please go for it. The second reason why I really like apps is, once again, because of the immersion factor. I can't be on the train with you when you commute to work in the morning. So if you can spend 15 minutes on your app, then please do so. I'm not going to be sipping wine, on the sofa with you at night, although, I can have an invite. I never refuse wine, but I'm not going to be there. So if you want to chill for 15 minutes of an evening, put your feet up and grab a glass of wine and think, do you know what? I want to do a bit of Duolingo and revise my French vocab. Perfect. Remember that learning a foreign language is all about tricking your brain into learning French. in different concepts, many different ways, shapes and form, and on a very regular basis. So are apps good? Yes, they are. Will apps make you fluent? No, they won't. Apps are very limited into where they can take you. And he's actually the owner, inventor of the Babbel app, who said it himself. He was accused one day or criticized on a forum for having built an app that is not working. So when he said to the people who weren't particularly satisfied, why are you saying that it's not working? People were saying, well, I can't even speak. I've been on it for 6 months. I know all these things, but I can't speak. When people speak to me, I don't understand. And he said, you will never speak a foreign language without learning with a human. And I never promised that in my app. My app has a completely different purpose. And he's spot on. Apps are great as an add-on resource. Another thing as well, a bit of a word of advice is that I was on Facebook, browsing on Facebook or procrastinating on Facebook, whatever you want to call it, the other day. And a friend of mine said that he was learning Ukrainian. He has a lot of Ukrainian families around where he lives, in the Bristol area in the UK. And he wanted to learn, he's retired, and he wanted to learn because he is volunteering. And he started to say that he was using Duolingo and the, Ukrainian, which I think we can all agree is not one of the easiest language to adopt, when English is your mother tongue. Or any other for that matter. But he was saying how, it was fairly easy and Duolingo was amazing and he'd already learned Greek with it and revised its French. And he's a friend of mine. He is such a talented linguist. It is just wonderful. But please don't compare yourself to people like this. Please don't think the fact that you can learn some Ukrainian fairly easily with an app mean that you can too. The truth of the matter is that my friend is a very, very high academic. He has learned Greek and Latin. He's completely fluent in French, is Spanish, pretty fluent in Italian, speaks German with a high level of proficiency. He is a language genius. And so, yes, this is part of his makeup. We talked about being cognitively wired in different ways. Well, clearly his brain screams foreign languages. And he's in his late 60s and he's retired and he does that hours every day. So if you've decided to take up a foreign language in your 40s and that wasn't really your forte at school and you are still working and you have a family to look after, think twice about adopting an app because so-and-so on Facebook said that they would learn it very well. Besides, it depends on your goals. I spoke to someone one day who was raving about an app to learn Spanish. And I said, I'm very interested in your feedback because this is the work that I do. And that person said, oh yeah, I know so much. Well, long story short, but when I started to speak to this person, she knew extremely little. So don't compare yourself to other people and their own experience, past experience of having learned foreign languages, but also check what people mean when they've said that they've learned a foreign language very well with an app, because their idea of very well may not be yours, especially if you're watching this video or this webinar, because I feel that if you are, you're pretty serious about learning a foreign language, and French in particular. So now let's move on to textbooks. Well, if you came to the academy here today or looked in my office, you would think Natalie's very fond of textbooks. I'm fond of books for sure. They're very important in my life. I love reading. But what do you think of textbooks? Again, When I first started 20 years ago and not having any experience at all, I bought every single textbooks that I could find. Some that focused on verbs, some that focused on grammar, on vocab, on different situations. They're still here in the cupboard at the Academy, and they are over 100. Textbooks have a place in your journey of learning French, but I'd like to explain what they're good at and what they may not be amazing at. Learning with a textbook means that you are going to cover some content in Unit 1, then a bit more in Unit 2, then in Unit 3, then in Unit 4. When you get to Unit 10, it's unlikely that you'll remember what was in Unit 1. And that is the downside of textbooks. You see, you shouldn't learn a foreign language as an object, something that you can learn and talk about, something that you learn and talk about. You should learn a foreign language as an entity that lives, not an object. Let me give you an example. When you were learning history at school, you were told, what happened in that century, and you learned some dates. And then you moved to a different era, and then you learned some dates. You can't change that. You can't move that. You can learn history as an object. You just learn the dates and what happened. You discuss it. You're not going to change it. When you learn a foreign language as an object, what happens is you learn a series of knowledgeable chunks, but you don't know how to use it. And that is the downside of textbooks. You learn all these chunks, just like you learn dates, through a chronological order when it was a history class. But you can't use it after. You don't need to use history dates. You just need to know them and place them if you have a history test. With languages, you need to use it. Learning it as little different objects serves no purpose. And that's where textbooks really fall a bit short. They can, however, be very good for things like illustrations, especially the new textbooks, so they still make loads. My colleagues and I were looking at a very recent one in French that we want to buy. Very often they will explain a concept. So, for example, the difference in French between the two past tense that are the most in use, imparfait and passé composé, imperfect and perfect. I found in a textbook the other day the most beautiful illustration with great colors for visual learners. Amazing. It was fabulous. For things like that, for you as a visual aid, it can be very good. It's also very good if you are the kind of learner who really likes to sit down and do a bit of quiet homework. They can be very good, but you see, they have to be used in relation to what you are currently learning. So, for example, if you are currently covering in your class with your coach imperfect versus perfect, then it should be okay to start with Unit 13 if Unit 13 in the textbook talks about this. And in that instance, they are an excellent tool. So we still buy them, by the way. But I just want to warn students against using them in the order that they are presented to you, and also not look outside of the textbook. That is really limiting and narrowing your learning of, again, what is a very vast subject. And with textbooks, you don't really get the difference in the language culture or the difference in the language nuances. It's a little bit too narrow as far as I'm concerned. But again, for all the reasons that I've just mentioned, they can still be a very good learning tool. Now, Bilingual Magazines. I am a big fan of magazines. But ask yourself the question, do you like reading magazines? You know, do you like reading magazines in your own mother tongue about a topic that you like? Do you like gossips magazines? Do you like magazines that talk about motorcycle because it's a passion of yours? You need to have a particular affection, I want to say, with magazine. It needs to be something that you enjoy doing. You grab a magazine, you go and spend an hour at the coffee shop, you do your shopping on the Friday night, and you always grab a magazine in the supermarket because you know that's your little treat for when you come home. If that is the case, then bilingual magazines are going to be a little gem for you. And why also? Because you can use them in many different ways. You can choose to just read an article that is just a very short paragraph with a glass of wine. That's a recurring thing, the glass of wine. And by the way, I should have said that from the very first minutes of this webinar. Absolutely scientifically proven that alcohol helps fluency, drops all inhibitions. Now, you could just see it as a nice little relaxing time with your magazine. But magazine can also be used with a notepad and a highlighter, and you read it and you go through an article that you actually can make sense of, but there's a lot of vocabulary in there that you're not aware of. Go through it, highlight the vocabulary you don't understand. Go and find out what it means. Create your own little, write it down or create your own little dictionary. I often advise students to use little index books, French to English, English to French. So you create your own little dictionary, go and write it down. Another thing that I often advise students to do, and whilst it may sound a little bit odd, it is actually something I did personally when I was learning English. I grabbed the magazine and I read out loud. I do apologize. This is the half French, half English dog. Vichi's office dog, being a little bit impatient. Now, I used to grab, obviously my magazine was in English, and I used to grab the magazine and read full articles out loud. That did two things for me. Number one, it increased my confidence in speaking when I was speaking in real life situation. It really helped. I think that's probably because I found myself practicing and speaking English so often that I could hear my voice and it felt okay. I probably had an accent, and when I was reading, I felt very comfortable because I didn't have to second guess what I had to say. I was reading the text. I knew that was pure, beautiful English without any mistakes. So that gave me a lot of confidence. But again, it doesn't just happen once, you know, it's not an overnight success. This is something I was doing on a weekly basis. Really helped me to speak in real life situation. But the second thing that I often talk about as well is it helped me with my accent, because interestingly enough, when I was reading something out loud and I would stumble across a word, again, I would write it down. And then when I go to class, I'd ask my teacher and say, how do you say that word? And she would tell me, and I would pronounce it, and then it would go in. So personally, I love magazines because I think that they are an entertaining way of helping you learn French, and they can be used in many different ways. Video games is number 9. Now, I am not going to pretend to be a geek because I am absolutely not a geek. I know next to zero about video games. But part of our work as linguists is clearly to research the matter. And I was talking to another of our colleagues, Laure, and she told me that her husband learned English, he's French, through video games an awful lot. So I wanted to know more because it's, generally not something that I had thought of. Well, you see, her husband actually studied for quite a few years. So I expect that he would have learned English to a substantial level, either at high school or university. And yet he said that video games taught him so much. What he said was that, and again, we talked about community in classroom, when this is a virtual community. So he said that he was playing video games that involved being with another online community, and that they had, it was a bit of an adventure, but they had tasks to do. They had missions. And so he said that whilst he was really involved in this like gripping video game, he had to pursue his mission. He had to find clues. He had to speak to other people, and he was surrounded by this community, and all of this was in English. If you like video games, can you find one in French? I can help you for that. I can call my geeky friends. But isn't this fascinating that someone who already has, you know, a very decent level of English through an academic journey only says, try video games, they're amazing. When you start to think about it, you can really see how being absorbed in that community and start to think about interacting with everyone and getting your brain engaged all in that target language, with which for you is French, can work. So video games could be on your list. Now we go to number 10 and we talk about residential programs. Immersion, 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 immersion. There is, you know, nothing that anyone would ever say about the amazing immersion factor, when you learn a foreign language. And we organize every year a 6-day immersion program to France, which we have done for now 6 years, and it's always been a great success. It is undeniable that being immersed in the country where the language is being spoken is going to boost your language skills. But again, if that is something that you want to do, really start to do some research about what is right for you. Is it a language and cultural program like the one we offer? Is it more of an academic setup where you want to go to a university in a French-speaking country? Do you want to go and live with some French people, with a French family for a few weeks? I'm not going to go into all the details for all these options, but I am more than happy to discuss this over the phone anytime. I've seen all these different residential options work very well for some students, and I've seen quite a few being a little bit of a disaster. And I think that that could have been avoided if people truly understood what was in it for them. And please remember that immersion can be done at home. We all have a smartphone, you can turn that into French. So every time you look at it, it's in French. If you know your way around your iPhone or any other smartphone very well, go in the setting, change the language. You may not be very popular with all the members or the members of your family, but if you really want to focus on vocabulary for a week, grab post-its. Start to put post-its everywhere in the house. So every time you go around the house, you see all these French words. There are plenty of different ways that you can immerse yourself at home. You could make it a routine to brush your teeth every day, and in that time, listen to a 5-minute podcast. After a few days, your brain will start to think in, but also demand some French interaction every morning when you brush your teeth. So immersion can be at home, but clearly we would encourage you to try an immersion program. And now we are down to number 11, 12, and 13, which are all quite similar because they go under the umbrella of media. Okay, so we look at radio, TV, films, and podcasts. All of these are amazing. Why? Because you can pick and choose. But two, because the language goes in your subconscious. And when you learn a foreign language, so when you learn French, your brain goes through 5 different steps. The first time you hear a new word, it goes in your subconscious, and as far as you're concerned, you haven't even noticed it. You know nothing about it. The second time round, you think, oh, I think that rings a bell, but I don't know what that means. The third time, you'll think, oh, I think I know that. And given the context, I think it might mean this. And then the fourth time, you think, yeah, definitely means that. I now know a new word. And the fifth time, you can say it. 5 different steps. So when you listen to the radio, you may not understand all of it, but please let me tell you that an awful lot goes in your subconscious, and it only needs to be triggered by the magazine, by a lesson that you will attend for that word or expression to start to go up on the ladder in your brain to the point where you'll be able to use it. So the reason why it's also brilliant is that it doesn't require much of an effort. You know, you're cooking with the radio on, you're traveling with the radio on. The TVs and films, you know, is there a film that you love? Is there a film that you've watched plenty of times? Watch it in French. Why? Because you don't have to think about the story. You know the story so well, and the chances are you know a lot of the dialogues. So watch it in the target language. You can watch films that you enjoy and put the French subtitles. You know, you can put films with the English subtitles and people speaking in French. You decide what works best for you. But in all that time, your brain is immersed in the language. And podcasts, you know, podcasts are fabulous. Find a podcast on a subject that interests you. Find podcasts of French lessons. We have our own podcasts. Our podcast is all about the difference between France and England, because this is where both our offices are. You know, what's the difference in the education system? What's the difference in the health system? And I invite people and we talk about this. Why don't you listen to this? And the great thing about all of that is that you can listen to them over and over again. You know, the news, if you don't have time to watch the BBC News, go on your laptop when you arrive at work. If you're in England, put on the BBC News and then find the equivalent in France. Let me tell you, the chances are, as the time as I'm recording this webinar and the Queen has died, both are going to talk about it. You read it in English, then you read it in French. So use and abuse media. You know, they're everywhere. They're in our faces all the time. Try to pick out all the little bits that are going to help you. But the real nugget behind all of these is that you do not need to find resources where you can automatically understand what's going on. You can absolutely use resources where, to start with, you don't have a clue. I told you that I love reading. I spent hours when I lived in the north of England and I was still a student. I spent hours drinking a coffee, because that's all I could afford, and read all the newspapers that were offered in the coffee shop. And I read and I read and I read. And I used to not understand the words of some of these, and apart from maybe vaguely the title. So get into the habit of confronting the French language in a way that you don't understand it, and be comfortable with that. Because part of becoming proficient in a foreign language is being very uncomfortable in an environment where you don't understand the language. You know, there is no learning French, there is no French proficiency, and there is certainly no French-English bilingualism if at some point you are not completely outside your comfort zone. And all that I've discovered now is a way to help you understand how all of those different commandments work. It's a way to show you all that is out there, and I'm sure that there are plenty more if I was to dig a little bit deeper, but they're a way of saying you need to get out of your comfort zone, but decide the type of learner that you are, check out your personality and color, work through your goals in a very systematic way, and then you'll have a level of confidence there. Because you might be listening to radio or a podcast you don't understand, but you have a goal and you understand how you work and you actually understand what you want out of this overall language program. So I hope that all of this is making sense. The next step for us is to I'd like to play a short video of a wonderful young lady called Catalina, who I think has been at the Academy for about 12 months now. And she talks about the blended learning element of learning a foreign language, which is the very last section that we will cover tonight. And my colleague Laura will talk you through this. We looked at the type of learner that you are and what's in this for you and how you can make it very personalized to you. Then all the different ways that you can learn. Now it's time to decide what you are going to choose in order to make it work for you. And it's very much the essence to everything that we do at the Academy, and it's called blended learning. So before Laura talks to you a little bit more about this, I would very much like, if I may, to share a video, if I can find it, from Catalina, because I think that Catalina, in her own words, explains very well why this is working for her. And it was even more of a compliment, because she says great things about Vichy, but it was a very interesting insight, because Catalina has learned foreign languages in her own country for a very young age. So this is something that she is used to.
Hello, my name is Catalina. I've been with Vichy for almost a year now. And I am actually a native Spanish speaker, learning French now in English, which has been like a challenge for me, but actually very enjoyable at Vichy and much more easier than what I thought it was going to be. Thanks to lots of resources I've been given and all the support with the teachers. I've been learning French since I was very little in school, and then every now and then with college as well. And French has always been kind of a part of my life. French boyfriend, French in-laws. Now it became a bit more urgent than need to learn it. So that being said, I've tried many ways to approach it, many different methods. And I always felt like very anxious when I was learning a language, because I felt like it was a linear progress or linear process where I needed to assess that I was always climbing up a ladder kind of way. With Vichy, it was different. With Vichy, I felt like I was free to grab whatever was in the menu, if that makes sense, just not limit myself by the level I was at or that I thought I was at, and actually then ended up doing much better by just immersing in the language, just going out there, talking to people, attending classes in person. They allowed me to kind of play with all the different resources that they have. So I could choose what's best for me, for my lifestyle, for my work schedule, my abilities, and how I like to learn things. So to give an example, I started with in-person classes, which were amazing. Now, because of distance, I can't go to the academy, sadly, but they were amazing. I had the option to use Lingua Attack as well, which was like a very quick way of refreshing while I was studying, while just working or in between my working schedule as well. I have the option of having online classes, which was amazing. And even during the pandemic, it was really enjoyable, and it's still classes, online classes are. And I felt there was like no right or wrong way to learn, which I would say is kind of a different feeling when you're at Vichy than other academies, because you are not assessed by kind of that ladder kind of feeling, but just you just enjoy the language, and you just enjoy the people you meet, and having interesting discussions, and everything you learn gets put into context, which is very different from other French courses where I was just basically repeating colors in French, animals, verbs, conjugating verbs that I would never use probably. Vichy condensates and kind of focuses on things that you would use, and gives you very interesting topics that you can also discuss and apply while you're also enjoying the language. And I think that's key for me. At least for me, it really works. And I'm sure that for you, it will as well.
So stop sharing.
Search for the best hotel deals, compare prices, get breakfast included, and stay flexible. Search now on
So it was a lovely example of what you just said about Queen Elizabeth's death being translated into many different languages as well. Literally, just as you said it, there it was.
Do you know that I actually had a phone call from the local paper in Jura, where I come from, because they wanted me to, tell them about the passing of the Queen and how I felt about the royal family and all the rest of it. So it's everywhere in France at the moment. So I think that here's an example for it. Whilst you talk about this, let's just mention Laura and I did a consultation last week for actually a French client. So from the French office, the other way around to you, he wants to learn English. And he was saying that one of his challenges is to understand people with different accents. And he needs that for work. So he said, he does trade shows, and when he speaks to people who have your typical, if you like, American or English accent, is fine, because he's been studying English for a long time. But he said they have a lot of people who come from Asia or Africa or South America, and that throws him. The day after we had the consultation, I was watching the news. I was working from home, and I watched everything about the what's happening at the moment with the royal family and King Charles and all the rest of it. And they were interviewing people from the Commonwealth, and even there, all the different accents. So I actually sent an email to the customer, and I said, look, is there a way that you can get a BBC in France, or is there a way that you can watch some recordings on your laptop? Because quite frankly, right now, just online, you have people talking about the death of the Queen. It's simple knowledge, simple language. You'll know exactly what it's all about, and listen to all these individuals from different countries, from the Commonwealth, all different accent. So absolutely. When you learn a foreign language, that's the beauty about it. You can grab things from everywhere. So talking about blended learning, this is the last thing that we'll mention today. And this is something that is very, very close to our heart. I often say that, again, because when I started, I had no experience or no training to teach. I tried so many different resources that I think I was doing my own little blend at the time. Blended learning actually came about 20 years ago, but it's only really emerged in the training world and not just languages in the last few years. So Laura is pretty much an expert at that. So Laura, I'm going to share my screen. I think you can. I think you've got something that you want to show us. So go ahead and let us know how our students can work on their own little blend.
Excellent. So here I think we can see, there you go, my little blender. So this is the picture that we love to get out, but it really is a picture that really kind of shows what blended learning is. So as you can see, I have a blender in the middle, and the idea of blended learning is that you pick and you take all of the parts of language learning that you enjoy, that you know work for you. So going back to the strategies that we learn, whether you're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, whether you like to have things that are very rule-based if you're a blue, compared to if you maybe like things that are very fun if you're a yellow. It's about really thinking about everything that we've said so far, all of the different strategies we've spoken about, all of the different resources that we've spoken about, and taking what sounds right for you and taking what you think will work for you and putting it into your own smoothie. So it's about making your own personal combination. So picking the ingredients that work for you, the different resources, the different things that work for you, but also putting them in the quantity that works for you as well. And also remembering, as I said earlier, that this may change as you go on. And the thing about blended learning is that nobody's going to have the same smoothie. What works for you is not going to work for someone else. And that means you can't just take what someone has said online. I've done this, and this is how I learn the language in 2 weeks, is what they come out with. It's not about copying what other people have done. It's about being inspired from everything that you see and taking it and putting it into your own perfect smoothie. So as Natalie said, taking what you know you enjoy already in your everyday life, whether that is reading magazines, whether that is scrolling through your phone and spending too much time on social media, therefore thinking, oh, I should maybe start following some French Instagram accounts so I can start getting some French content into my phone. Whether that is, you know that you spend every day, actually maybe you know that you go and you read the news every day, reading the news in your target language, all of these tiny little things that you do every day and taking them into your target language and eventually creating your own perfect and completely personalized combination of things that work for you. And again, I just want to really focus on the idea of being flexible with this and adding things and trying things that maybe you didn't know that you would enjoy, or things that you didn't necessarily know would work for you, and taking them and trying them and continually refining the smoothie, continually changing the ingredients, changing the combination of ingredients and the strength of the things you've got, so the amount of different things that you have, and just changing it until you eventually find the thing that works for you in the moment, and then working with that and just continually, as I said, trying new things, trying new combinations, and finding your perfect smoothie for you.
Wonderful, Laura. Thank you so much. So what would be really good right now is for you to pause this webinar and take a moment to decide what you want to put in your French smoothie. How do you see yourself learning? What do you want to add in your smoothie that seems very exciting to you? I'm just trying to find out, Laura, how we can stop seeing your...
Oh, do you want me to remove it?
Oh, sorry. I'm not a great expert at Zoom. Okay, so we're now coming to the end of this webinar. And really my question to you is, how do you see yourself learning now? Do you feel suited to a language program that incorporates some of these elements? We would really love to have your feedback. You know, what's exciting in our line of work is to do all the research and to do lots of trials. but then obviously getting feedback from our students is, the most exciting things of all. So please do tell us. And if you feel that being part of a language program within a community of very like-minded people who are really looking for a result with their French lessons is something that you are after, then please come to me, because we are currently taking application for our Ambition program, okay? It's a program that my team and I have been working on for a few months now. It's extremely result driven, but still with a lifestyle element. We're not looking for people who want to learn French, part-time or full-time. It is very much a lifestyle language program, but it targets an awful lot of what we've said tonight, and it is very much designed to take you to some specific results in the next 12 months. So Laura, anything else to add?
No, I think we have covered everything, but just that, that we really, we do enjoy helping people and guiding people as well to find the perfect solution for them. And Natalie and I are always very, very happy to discuss individual cases with you as well, to really help you work out what works for you and help you understand why specific things might work for you and why other things don't as well. It really is kind of what we are experts in and what we really enjoy to do as well.
Absolutely. And the last thing that I wanted to say, which really fits in well with what you've just said, is that some of you who follow us or who have been clients for a long time will know that we very recently over the summer acquired another language training company in London called My Language Lab. And My Language Lab is an excellent company. It has become a sub-brand of the Vici Language Academy, and it offers a slightly different concept in terms of it being tutoring. Just plain tutoring, no fluff, but excellent quality language tutoring. Vici is a boutique language academy that offers language coaching. That has all the fluff that we've just spoken about tonight. That has, all these elements of putting the students at the heart of every single lesson and designing language programs that are going to feed the student's brain in the way that the students learn. Tutoring is a lot more about passing on our French language knowledge to our students. So having those, two branches now within the academy is really quite wonderful to us, because it truly means that we can offer more options to the students who come to us for help and guidance, and we can find different solutions. We fully understand that for some students the straightforward tutoring is going to be perfect, and then we will be able to say to our students, well, there you go, have a look at My Language Lab, let's define together how you're going to learn, who you're going to learn with. If on the other hand, what you've heard tonight really hits the nail on the head, for you really spark something where you think this is really how I want to learn, then you really should be in the hands of the Vici Language Academy coaches. So do reach out. I will leave my calendar, so you can all make an appointment either with myself or with Laura. I tend to focus on all the questions with regards to the application for the Ambition program, with any personalized programs, any of the memberships that we offer at the Academy. Laura very much focuses on all the digital platforms. So thank you ever so much. Merci beaucoup de nous avoir écoutés. I really, really hope that this was helpful. And as Laura said earlier, our favorite part of our job is to sit with students and share with them our passion for the French language. And so if you need anything at all, please reach out. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir et à bientôt.
Merci beaucoup.